everyone, it is Friday today, one of my favorite days of the week because I love the weekend. There is a ton of pasta sauce left over, so I'm going to be making a bit more spaghetti, although hubby already told me that he's pretty full. He had lunch catered at work today, so he filled up on Greek food, but he says he can eat spaghetti, so I'm just going to make the normal amount, and maybe we'll have some leftovers tomorrow, which we'll be able to have for lunch. I've just boiled the water, so I'm going to take a look at what we have for day 15. Cinnamon almond rooibos. This is South African rooibos, cinnamon, almonds, and natural almond flavors. Ooh. Hopefully you guys can see this pretty clearly, but there are actual pieces of cinnamon stick in here. It is so fragrant. You can smell the rooibos, the cinnamon. Don't really smell the almond too much, so I'm curious to see whether or not I'll be able to taste that. Oh, that smells incredible. Can't wait to taste it. It smells really, really strong of cinnamon. We are about to try our tea. This is the cinnamon almond rooibos. Cheers. Hubby is super full. Oh. Very cinnamony. It's oddly sweet. Do you find it very sweet? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Lulu's like, give me some of that. I like it, but I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites. Do you like this one?
Yeah, I like it. I like sweet things though.
Yeah, hubby likes sweet. I'm okay about it. I don't think I would buy this one. It's just the cinnamon is very strong. It overpowers the rooibos to me. I don't taste the almond and I find it quite sweet. It doesn't have that artificial sweetener taste though, which is good. I'm okay about it. I could drink it again, but I wouldn't buy it, I don't think. However, I really ended up enjoying that orange Earl Grey that we had yesterday. So this morning I heated it up again. I just microwaved it for about 30 seconds or so. And then I put in some honey and some almond milk, just straight out of the fridge, the almond milk. I didn't have time to foam it again in the morning, but it was delicious. Did you like it this morning when you tried my Earl Grey? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was really, really good. I find the flavors from some of the black teas from Tea Haus, they take milk really, really well. They don't taste watered down or anything like that, so that one I ended up really enjoying. Although, I think I would prefer just a regular Earl Grey versus the one with the orange, but the orange one, it was nice too. Let's open up our Kinder calendars. We are on day 15 already.
Here it is.
Oh, it's a narrow one. Oh, is it the bar? I like that one. Yay! Yeah, I really like this one. I think my favorite one is the country one though now. I like the country one a lot. So one of you guys asked what podcasts I listen to, so I thought I would show you guys on my podcast app. Right now I'm using an app called Overcast, and my friend recommended this to me. I find it pretty good. Nothing too exciting about it, but I was getting really annoyed with the Apple Podcast app. After the update, it just looked really weird. I found it not as intuitive and difficult to navigate when I was walking to work, so I switched to this one and I've been enjoying it so far. Right now I'm listening to a podcast called Startup. My coworker introduced me to this podcast, and he actually introduced me to a lot of these podcasts, and I love them. So I'm always grateful to him for suggesting things that I would like. The Startup Podcast is fantastic. I didn't think I would like it as much as I did, but the way they do the storytelling, especially from the very first season, is just very interesting, very captivating. I would highly recommend it. You do have to start listening from the very beginning. First season, they focused on the company that actually does the podcast. It was basically the founder documenting his journey with starting a podcast company. Very engaging, very interesting. He worked at This American Life. The Startup Podcast has a very similar look and feel, if you will, to the podcast Serial. So if you guys listen to Serial and you loved kind of that sort of feel, I think you will like Startup. There was also a mini series that focused on American Apparel, and I found that one really interesting as well. So highly recommend that. That's what I'm currently listening to. In terms of my other favorite podcasts, I would say the Tim Ferriss Show, which is another podcast that was recommended to me by my coworker, is one of my favorites. I've listened to a fair number of episodes, the most recent favorite being the one with Tim Urban. Most recently, I heard him talking about his drunk dialing episodes, which is why I downloaded those 3, and they didn't really interest me before, but I am gonna give a listen and see if I like them. But that's kind of in the queue. He has a new podcast called Tribe of Mentors, and I don't recommend this one as much. They're a series of questions that he has guests answer, and he seems to interject with questions, but he doesn't really. So he pre-records stuff and they pre-record stuff and he just edits it together, so it's not a true interview. So I would say if you want to get a taste of Tim Ferriss, start out with the Tim Ferriss Show. Once you're done all of those episodes, which there are very many of them, then you can switch to Tribe of Mentors if you're interested in that. The other podcast, which I have been absolutely loving, this is probably one of my favorites, is the Ultimate Health Podcast. This is a Canadian couple. I like the format. It's basically a question and answer. They let the guests speak a lot, which I really like. And it's just very interesting. So when I talked in my last video about listening to a lot of health podcasts, this is typically what I'm referring to. I just find the information very interesting. The most recent episode was actually a birth story, and I listened to that yesterday on my way home, and I was almost in tears. It was just so emotional, and I'm not really someone who tears up at stuff. As you guys know, I'm not planning to have children and not too interested in this sort of thing, but I still listen to this podcast and it really impacted me. Maybe because Megan Telpner herself was getting emotional. If you're a mom or you're interested in childbirth or motherhood, I do recommend that podcast. It was quite emotional. So that was a great one. I just love the Ultimate Health Podcast. The other one I would recommend, which I have finished already, is another one that was introduced to me by my coworker, and it's called Revisionist History. Malcolm Gladwell, if you guys don't know, is a pretty famous author. A book called The Tipping Point, which a lot of people who are interested in business and that type of thing, even pop culture, I guess, have read it. He also authored Blink and a few other books. I've read pretty much all of his books and I just find him very intelligent. He likes to reveal connections among things that you wouldn't really think about. And his podcast is a really interesting look at history, maybe some aspects of history that you may have overlooked or missed. I just found the podcast really interesting. Now, some episodes are better than others. There weren't that many episodes and he doesn't seem to be putting out any new ones. Hallelujah is one that I really liked. It's about the song. The last podcast that I really listened to is by the Minimalists. I'm okay about this podcast. I'll typically listen to it if there isn't really anything else in my queue, although sometimes they have guests on that I'm more interested in. For example, they had Courtney Carver on, who did Project 333. She was the genesis of it. This podcast basically takes a little bit of a Q&A format, and I find it a little bit on the repetitive side, which is why I don't like it quite as much. So they tend to say the same things over and over again because it's a live podcast that they record on tour. So I'm okay about that one, but it's not one of my favorites. So those are basically the ones that I've been listening to. The James Altucher Show is something that my coworker did recommend, but I couldn't get used to his style. So while I'm not subscribed to him, sometimes he does have guests on that I'm interested in, and my coworker recommended this one in particular because he and I are both really into the Tim Ferriss Show, and Tim Ferriss happened to be a guest on the James Altucher Show. My coworker is aware of how I don't like how James Altucher interrupts so much. And it's not only interruptions, but I guess it's the way that he does it. Again, it's just a personality thing, but my coworker assured me that the Tim Ferriss interview was done very well. The host let Tim Ferriss do a lot of the talking, so I tried it out, I listened to it, and he was absolutely right. I really enjoyed this podcast. So those are basically the podcasts I've been listening to. I think that's gonna be it for today. I should have my chocolate, and the reason I'm in front of my computer is because I wanted to do a screen recording direct to my laptop. I've done that now, so I'm going to have a bite of my chocolate. I'm gonna sign off for the evening, and then I will be back tomorrow with another vlog. So cheers to chocolate. Still delicious. I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.